everybody. Welcome to Langer at the Mic. Hope you've been having a wonderful holiday season, also staying safe from the really bad weather in Montreal if you're from there. Once again, today we are joined by a wonderful guest. He is one of the hardest working people that I had the pleasure of working with on the row at TSN for Sports Center. He also did a little bit of AHL coverage back in the day. He is Mr. Jason Davidson. How are you doing, JD?
Great to be on here, Mike. Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure, JD. It's great to see you after all this time. As you know, we spoke with Glenn a couple weeks ago, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today. Obviously, you're from Montreal, big Habs fan as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about the game last night, of course. Not a really good one against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but also mostly talk about what's in the future, what's in the near future for the Montreal Canadiens. So obviously, we all know the Habs lost 7-1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. But you wanted to rip into Chris Weidman today, and why is that?
Well, listen, you heard his comments after the game saying, bringing in the goaltender with 1:10 left, I believe it was, in the third period. But who cares? What's the big deal? Why is he so upset about this? And even my fellow West Islander, Mike Matheson, said, you know what, Toronto, they're tuning up for the playoffs here. So they're just trying to be sharp on the power play and everything. And it's almost like he pretty much disagreed with what Weidman said. So I think, sour grapes, I'm going to say, on the part of Chris Weidman. And we're not going to get into past discussions about his Uber ride and stuff like that when he played for the Ottawa Senators. Well, we won't go there. But I'm on Matheson's side there. And yes, I'm a little biased because Mike Matheson's from Point Claire, Quebec, a fellow West Islander from myself. I'm from Pancor, which is just off the West Island. So I don't know. It just seemed like he was maybe a little too emotional about it. And I don't know. I just don't see the big deal with it.
So his exact quote was, "They'll get what they deserve in a few weeks," Chris Weidman. That was his exact quote. And just for some context, Jet Alexander was thrown into the game with about 1:10 left. I guess it was 7-1 at that point. Jet Alexander, by the way, U of T goaltender. I happen to have covered the games that he was in when he was playing the Thunderwolves, the Lakehead Thunderwolves, in the OUA semifinal. OUA semifinal. And unfortunately, his U of T Blues lost to the Thunderwolves. Well, unfortunately for him. So he goes from the OUA playoffs to being the workhorse for U of T in the OUA playoffs to appearing in an NHL game with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just an amazing experience for him. And I know we saw that with the Oilers, where Woodcroft put their emergency backup goaltender in late in the game where they were up by 4-1 or 5-1. So, and I'm honestly, as a former goaltender myself, having played maybe not highest level, but still decently at a competitive level, I don't know why we don't see this more often.
Exactly. I think, and like a lot of times when e-bugs come in, Mike, it's usually due to injury. Let's think back to Scott Foster with Chicago back in 2017.
Well, don't bury the lead, David Ayers.
That's true. And guess what? Here's the thing, like, have fans, like, we all like to rip on the Leafs and everything. We like to make fun of them and chirp them, but like, you know what? Let them enjoy the moment. Like, and like what Weidman said about they'll get what they deserve. Well, we'll see what happens against the Tampa Bay Lightning, because the Tampa Bay Lightning right now are not playing very good hockey. Right. But I still think it's to be an incredible series.
Right now, speaking of which, in terms of off-season moves, in terms of what the Canadiens are going to do, I think it would be really appropriate right now, with 2 games left in the season, to play a little game that I would like to call, I just made it up this morning, I would like to call this game Walk, Trade, or Keep. So what we're going to do here, JD, is I'm going to list off 10 veterans that are...
I'm going to give you one-word answers, aren't I?
Yes, I would. That's the best way to do this, honestly. I got 10 veterans that are either have expiring contracts at the end of the season, or they are being talked about as trade possibilities, buyout candidates. So, and I want to hear again your thoughts about them. So let's take it right from the top with Josh Anderson. Buy, trade, or keep? Keep. Really? Keep. Why? Why are you keeping Josh Anderson?
He scored more than 20 goals this year before getting hurt. He loves playing for Montreal. And you know what? I get it. People say when he signed, it was a 7-year contract that Bergevin inked him to,
Something like that.
which
Yeah,
seemed a little
6-7
long when they got him from
years.
Columbus and everything, which is fine. But I think he wears that CH on his sleeve. And I think he was having a really good year. And guess what? If he wasn't hurt last night, it might have been a 7-4 game because he probably would have scored a hat trick because he always does well against Toronto, right?
He does indeed. But my problem with Josh Anderson, I keep saying, is that when the Canadiens, by the time they're ready to contend, Josh Anderson will be in his 30s. And with the way he plays, it's not sustainable over an 82-game season. He doesn't have enough skill. He relies too much on his just gung-ho style as opposed to playing a skilled, smart hockey game, which is not sustainable for the long term.
And they call him the power horse, right? That's
for a reason.
I think that's just, yeah. Okay, and that's a fair argument, Mike. But I think who's going to pick up that contract, right? Because now he's 3 years in, I believe.
A lot of teams were interested at the deadline. They could have moved him. I think right now it's a matter of Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon trying to maximize his value. But I keep saying that's more. If you could get that contract off your hands and not retain any of it, that's value in itself. That's the number one value right there.
Yeah. Okay. So let's compromise. How about this? Let's go at it with him again next season. And if it's not working out, maybe there's a deadline flip next season. But I do like Josh Anderson. I am a fan.
I think the time for him to get moved right now it was the trade deadline, but now it's the off season. For however long the Canadiens hold on to Josh Anderson, and when they could be trading him, in my opinion, that's just lost opportunity. But anyway, we'll agree to disagree on that one. Next,
okay, that's fine.
Yeah, next I have in a very similar category is Joel Edmundson.
Move him.
Walk, trade.
Move him. Yep, trade him.
All right, good. Won't talk too much about that. Joel Edmundson, he's a leader. He's a Stanley Cup champion. But so is David Savard. You don't need really two of those. And Mike Matheson's a veteran as well. Yeah, we will. Mm-hmm. That's all we can really say. Nothing much to add to that, right, JD?
It's a matter, Mike, of make some room for some youth on the left side.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's how I see it with Edmundson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so now I'm going to bring one up, which I think we could have a very interesting discussion about, which we've talked about on Twitter before, is Jonathan Drouin. Do you walk, trade, or keep Jonathan Drouin?
Okay, so this one's been really tough for me, and I've gone back and forth, Mike, endlessly with this one. So if it's a team-friendly contract, 1.5 for 1 year, bring him back. Otherwise, it's time to move on. That was a bad trade from the start. Let's admit it. Losing Sergachev was not a good move for this organization. But I think it was pressure to get a local superstar. And I think Bergevin kind of buckled under the pressure to make that thing happen. But Sergachev, oh man, speaking of left side defenseman, who's going to be playing the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, it would still be nice to see him in a Habs uniform.
I definitely agree with you on that. Again, I've been mentioning consistently that Jonathan Drouin should, if he could be brought back 1 year, maybe not even 1.5, maybe 1 year, 900,000. I just think that still. My only concern is why did he miss a practice that led to him getting benched? That's a distraction that they don't need. That's something that obviously turned me off, and I'm sure a lot of people that much more off in terms of the idea of bringing him back.
Yeah, and also, sorry to interject here. He wasn't there during the run to the Cup final.
Exactly, the mental health issues, which we all deal with, and I think
exactly.
I don't regret him from his standpoint. I don't think he regrets missing that because he had to take care of himself. But I still think he brings such a unique skill set there. He is the best passer on the team outside of maybe Nick Suzuki and maybe Mike Matheson. Just his ability to just find the seams from cross ice from the corner to an open guy in front. We saw that on the Jordan Harris goal against Buffalo last week. We saw that earlier in the season. I think it was against Pittsburgh, I want to say, where it led to Nick Suzuki or Cole Caulfield's tying goal against Pittsburgh, and the Canadiens ended up winning in overtime. So I just think his unique skill set, even though, the baggage, which is why 1 year vet minimum at most. And I just, there's also the good Chinook factor, the fact that he is from St. Agathe. He has played in Lac St. Louis with the Lions as well, like Mike Matheson. But I just think that he just has, again, a unique connection to the team, to the city. And I think there's still part of him that wants to stay in Montreal. And I would be willing to give him that just with a minimal contract, minimal expectations. I think that would be perfectly fine for Jonathan Drouin. So I'm glad we agree on that one. And I'm interested to see what our viewers and listeners have to say as well. So now I want to move on to an interesting case, Denis Gurianov. Do you let him walk? Do you trade him, or do you keep him?
Okay, so obviously this is part of the Dodonov trade with Dallas. He really impressed me his first few games. He had that beautiful goal against the Kings, I remember. Oh my God. He came down that left wing and beautiful top corner shot. But apart from that, Mike, he really hasn't impressed me that much. So I'm thinking, but he's an RFA, right?
RFA, yeah.
Yeah, RFA. So, I mean, maybe that's another situation, like try him out for a year or two. But apart from that, I'm on the fence with this one. I can't give you a keep, walk, or whatever, but I'm thinking, okay, maybe keep if he's an RFA.
5 goals, 3 assists, and 8 points in 21 games as a Hab. It looked good at the beginning because I think he had eight of those points in his first 15 games. So
yeah.
It looked good at a time. Also, you have to keep in mind a little bit of context. He's been playing with Jonathan Drouin as his center, out of position as his center. So I think that also has to be factored in. But I would also say walk, especially with the qualifying offer. It'll take several million to qualify him. So I'd say, I think I'm comfortable to let him walk. Next one, Christian Dvorak. Do you let him walk? I mean, he's under contract for a couple more years, so I wouldn't say buy him out per se, but do you trade or keep Christian Dvorak?
Definitely look for a trade there. Even if it's for like a pick or something like that. Like he's a good player, but like, this one always puzzled me, Mike, because when Bergevin made that deal, I was like, I don't know. Like, his numbers with the Coyotes were okay, but they weren't anything spectacular.
That was a Hail Mary to replace Kotkaniemi. Failed miserably.
So, who, by the way, hit 40 points yesterday with the Hurricanes.
Big deal. Yeah.
at a lot of money, too. So,
I've moved on from the Kotkaniemi ordeal because that was in the previous regime of Bergevin and not Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon. So I've moved on. But to me, so here's my answer to Christian Dvorak in terms of trading him or keeping him. And this is a boring one, I'll admit, but it depends on the draft. It depends on, can they pull a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois? It depends on what their center depth looks like, because one of the hardest hit positions the Canadiens have been hit by with injury was center. I just think that if you could put some depth behind Suzuki, it's not so much for what Christian Dvorak brings. I mean, he is their best faceoff man as of right now, but it's more so to take away responsibility from Nick Suzuki. And I think that that's where Dvorak has to be considered as a guy they have to keep if they can't bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois and if they don't draft a centerman to eventually replace Dvorak. So I would say it depends, and that's where I'll stand with Christian Dvorak. Mike Hoffman.
So he's what, one more after this?
One more at 4.5.
But who's going to take him?
You got to look to trade, but then the other question is, can you maybe buy him out? That's the other, in terms of let him walk. Do you maybe consider buying him out?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the cost. Like, or do you just like eat it up and say, okay, we'll keep him around for another year, and if by some miracle he goes on a tear next year, which he probably won't.
I'm gonna say keep, just because it's only one more year. It's only $4.5 million,
and then he's off the books.
And then he's off the books. Exactly. Yeah. So I'd say just kind of keep it the same way that they did with Drouin in terms of, and also taking on the Dadonov contract before they traded him, I guess. Just keep him, make it work.
Keep him on, see what happens. He's got 1 year to go.
I think with these veterans also an important note is that I feel like they don't have much more to prove at the NHL level. They just kind of want a chance to win in a good winning environment. And if there isn't that chance to win, then
Yeah.
they're professionals and they're expected to perform, sure, but they're also human and you can't really blame them for not being as motivated as they'd be on a contending team. Younger players, they have something to prove. They're trying to earn themselves a spot on the roster. Even guys like Cole Caulfield, he's trying to, he was on pace to score 40 goals this season before he got injured. And yeah, it's just I just veterans that have already established themselves, that have been there already. I think they just want a chance to get there again. And I think that's their motivation. And Mike Hoffman could be in that category where if there's more to play for, maybe he'll be better. And a very similar guy that you could say that for is Joel Armia.
Well, he did get a hat trick the other night.
He did get a hat trick against Washington, which ruined the tank.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of cracked me up the other day. Before he scored the empty netter, he tried it before, like on his previous shift, and I guess he missed it by like 3-4 feet, and it was an icing call. So Armia, sorry, Mike, remind me what's left on his.
4 more years left at $3.4 million. That's basically the Paul Byron contract. Or sorry, he has 2 more years left. He has next year and
2
year
years
after. Yeah, 2 more years left.
Move him if you can, but I don't know.
Do you buy him out?
Yeah, if you can't move him, buy him out.
If you can't move him, buy him out. You're that desperate to get rid of Armia.
I like the guy, but like I was super stoked when we picked him up, but he really hasn't shown me much apart from that hat trick the other day.
I think he's a guy that you actually keep and try to trade him at the deadline because of what he has done in the playoffs for the Canadians the last 2 times they've been in the playoffs. So I think he is at $3.4 million. That's a steep salary. That's a steep cap hit for sure. Maybe even offer to retain a little bit since it's only 2 more years left on his contract if they do end up moving him. So I think Armia is another situation, kind of like Hoffman. You keep him and you try to trade him at the trade deadline. We got 3 more here I'd like to get to real quick. Jake Allen.
So one of my esteemed colleagues at TSN, Evan Dobigan, I'm sure you know the name. He's a big Habs fan, and we have lengthy text conversations about this guy. And he's not a big Jake Allen fan. You look at his stats. Let's be honest. Montembeault has been the better goalie this season.
Yep.
I'm sure you can agree with that.
Yep.
But the thing is, Jake Allen, he's like that 1B kind of starter. You know what I mean? And what options do we have otherwise right now in goal?
Well, there's Caden Primo after that, and then there's Jacob Dobbs, who they signed to LC. There's also I think Ditcha. Like in terms of prospects, that's what you're looking at. You're trying to dig into your prospects once you if something happens to Sam Montembeault and you get rid of Jake Allen.
Yeah, I still think heading into the next season we will have an Allen Montembeault tandem.
Okay, but it should be Jake Allen also signed an extension, so he's on the books for another few more years. What is that? 3 years to be exact. Yeah. So until 2025 at $3.8 million, that's a pretty steep cap hit. But I think we've seen the trend with Jake Allen where he starts off very, very strong. He had a great start to the regular season,
and then
he gets injured and then he regresses. So I think it's almost like they have to almost plan that a little bit and start maybe play Jake Allen a little bit more early on, but then gradually over the course of a season turn more to Sam Montembeault, but actually commit to Sam Montembeault more as the season goes on and stop trying to go back to Jake Allen and pretend like he'll get back on his game, which he hasn't exactly been able to do these last couple of years. Even in like that COVID season, 2021, he played well in relief of Carey Price early on, but then he regressed as the season went along. Now, there are 2 more left on this list here, JD. This is probably a quick discussion here. Chris Tierney, any interest in keeping him or are we trading him? I mean, his contract is expiring, so it's a matter of do we keep him? Do they keep him for cheap or do they let him walk?
He's here for a good time, not a long time. He's walking.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that he's walking for
former Shark.
Yeah, just a waiver pickup. I mean, still could be a useful bottom 6 center for a contending team, maybe as for cheap, like a 13th, 14th forward. But anyway, yeah, I agree. Just let him walk. I think he was just brought in just because of how thin they were at center. Just they needed an extra body to play center.
They needed reinforcements.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
So yeah, you let him walk and try to hope that everyone at center stays healthy next year. And last but not least, this is a difficult one to talk about.
Oh boy,
Brendan Gallagher,
heart and soul player, right? But man, there's a lot left on that contract. There is a lot left on that contract.
4 more seasons, yeah, at 6.5.
I'm going to be biased and say keep because I love Gally. I know, like, he's been banged up and injured, and I don't know if anyone's going to take a flyer on him at this point. So I don't want to sound rude in saying we're stuck with him per se, but I think he's staying with the Habs for the foreseeable.
I think there's a way that you can keep Brendan Gallagher because you're probably not going to be able to trade him. It's basically you keep him or you buy him out. I think there's a way that you can keep Brendan Gallagher, but you have to load manage him. You have to let him, you have to limit him to maybe 40 games a season. That's it.
40?
And yeah, maybe 40, maybe that's even a little bit much because you want him playing his best hockey when it matters most. And the last couple of years he's played 35 this year and he played 56 last year, 35 the year before during the COVID season. So I would say, yeah, that 35 to 40 range is really where you want to keep Brendan Gallagher at to get the best hockey out of him. And I think that's the best way to keep him under the circumstances. If not, you have to buy him out at a certain point, whether it's this offseason or next offseason. They'd have to just, swallow the hit. But for now, I think you just have to load manage him.
You don't want to get too nostalgic too, right? When you're thinking of these players, and he's done great things for us. I think of that goal he scored against, I think it was against Ottawa in the 2015 playoffs, and he was an absolute warrior on the ice. 2014 playoffs, the guy was amazing. But at a certain point,
that's $6.5 million.
You got to think bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we said last offseason that was a big offseason for Hughes and Gordon. I think they passed the test of last offseason. This one's going to be another big offseason to see how they decide to accelerate or take their time with the rebuild. But that's all the time we have here with Jason Davidson from TSN. Hit subscribe. Give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Mike Langer for both. Jason, you're on Twitter at JasonD79, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. And can I say one last thing? I know I'm rocking a playoff beard, even though we're not a part of it. But I still like the look. So yeah. And I'm still excited for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think they're going to be fantastic. And I will say, my prediction for the Stanley Cup final: Colorado-Boston. Colorado repeats. You heard it from me.
I would love that. I would love to see. Colorado's just had so much. They just could not get over that hump for so long, and they finally won last year. I would definitely be down to them to win it again and create a little dynasty of their own. But once again, that's all the time we have. Hit like, hit subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.